party to actually come out and run against that one party, knowing that you have no chance of winning and you're not a stooge. You know, if you get yourself worked over and thrown in a hospital, then you know there is a democracy movement in the country. And they do have a democracy movement in Egypt. Probably no other country, but they do have one there. But they have a long history of Islamic. I mean, all of the Islamic movement starts in Egypt and moves elsewhere. So they have both sides of the issue. But both sides, okay, they said that what happened was the Muslims decided to make a move across the Middle East because they know we have a president of the United States that basically is not going to stop it. That's why they picked it. They know he's vulnerable. They know that he's trying to look like he's becoming a centrist.
Yeah, but see, here's part of it is with Obama speaking out against Mubarak. I mean, first of all, he's calling him to step down because he says he's unpopular, right?
But he's unpopular. He's far more unpopular than Mubarak is. I mean, he's only popular among his own party, and of that, the majority of Mubarak.
Here's the danger is, if Mubarak leaves office and Obama's going to say, well, I was the one that did it, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And then whatever happens, they try and attach to him because he's the one who claimed responsibility for getting him to leave the office.
They said, this is what I heard one of the Democrats said specifically. He said, my best advice is shut your goddamn mouth. Stop talking in public. Do it behind the back doors where all presidents do their business.
Well, because usually, I mean, the President of the United States does not traditionally speak out against another country and tell them to leave office.
Well, I know. Well, basically, he's trying to have it both ways because that's how Obama works. He tries to make it, he's basically telling Mubarak to get out and telling the people, I'm supporting you, when he can't support he's supporting the overthrow of an elected government, which he condemns George Bush for doing. So,
if you watch it at the beginning, it's a little bit blue, and then it turns a little bit more like skin tone.
I have no idea why the 3D camera does the things it
No, but it does. When I've done the interviews, it looks a little bit blue at the beginning.
Yeah, which means it's got to get warmed up. It might be because it's just a cold camera, but we actually can't find a cable for plugging our camera into the power, so we're running off a battery.
Yeah, so when you look at it, one's going to look a little more blue than the other one.
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway.
No, we're talking about the thing. It's just, I don't believe what you're seeing is legitimately going on in Egypt.
Well, whether you believe it or not, they're still making those changes,
well, the changes are going to be made, but...
Is this like a Wag the Dog?
Yeah, I'm assuming the only...
And I mean, like Wag the Dog is in the movie?
Okay, here's how it works is, I think Republican leadership, Republican pundits, and the President of the United States are the only ones in the world that don't know this is Wag the Dog.
And if you're going, what is Wag the Dog? It was a movie.
Actually, it was a movie, but it was based upon something that was based upon real things. But basically, what happens is, if you got a problem, do something to basically get you out of the trouble you're in by causing more trouble, which is really stupid.
Because the media gets distracted and goes, I swear, is the media like ADD? They get distracted and go to the next story?
It's got nothing. It's just like, okay, here's how it works. When I was growing up, even though we had radio, we had television, newspapers, and TV was just starting. Yeah, that's the whole damn folks, TV was just starting. Because I was in on the ground floor. I used to be one of those, hey, here is, Billy Bob and his Rangers. Yeah, I was one of the Rangers, folks. But I had my little toy six-shooters, and because they didn't allow us to have guns on television then, which is funny. We were more conservative with guns and stuff in the 1950s than they became when the Democrats took control. But no, even though I had newspapers, I had magazines, I had radio, and started TV, and then newsreels, they'd have them on TV. But we had, in theaters, we had a 24-hour news cycle 7 days a week. They would come on over the radio, and the Chinese have just done such and such. The Japanese government is basically not doing as they promised in the thing. You'd have these breaking into your whatever you were doing. You'd be in a movie theater, and they'd say, "Okay, we're going to talk at this." I was in a movie theater watching a movie when John Kennedy got killed. It was '62. That's 50 years ago, isn't it? God, I'm old. I'm in there watching a movie, And they stopped the movie and said the President of the United States has just been killed, and can we have a moment of silence? Well, the place was all filled full of news people because we had free tickets to go see the movie. So guess what happened? Everybody's gone except for one person.
Who?
I watched the movie. I got a free pass. So why was I going to go run out? But that wasn't my job. I wasn't that type of a news person. But I had free food. I had free drinks. You take the food and the drinks. I mean, how often can you get them up? So, but we had 24-hour news cycles 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Today, news stops at 3 o'clock on the West Coast.
It's not supposed to, because you
you
stop receiving press materials and things like that. I mean, and so what happens on the weekend? What do you basically get? Sports.
You whatever you can get. I don't even get entertainment news. I don't get.
Actually,
I get no entertainment news. The only entertainment news we get on Sunday is the release of the box office. That's it. That's all I get. And I can guarantee you, basically, roommates with the movie this week. Basically, there's no nudity in it. There's two hot girls.
Oh, there isn't?
And basically, it continues the trend of bad releases since the 1st of January. But
yeah, well, because Leighton Meister from Gossip Girl, and what the name of the girl that goes along with her, they put this thing on, what was it, Yahoo, that they look like each other?
Yeah, but just basically...
stars that look alike.
They said it's a bad movie where nobody gets naked, and basically, why in the hell would anybody want to see it? Well, because it's the only thing that's out there. But
I figured they had that on there so that they would get naked.
Yeah, well, no, they didn't. But they said that's an example of how bad things are. You don't even have 24-hour news cycles on social media now. They don't have that either. There's less social media. MySpace is getting ready to fold because of this. They said Rupert Murdoch's basically abandoning MySpace to go for his daily, and the daily is not going to have new. The daily is basically done by the same people that are doing his other newspapers, so it's just rehashed news from there.
I kind of figured it would be.
Yeah, you remember USA Today only published
all they did was reformat it, right?
Reformat it. It's just the same newspaper. It's just done, and the Wall Street Journal and probably Wall Street Journal and New York Post are put together for a daily thing. But
and USA Today, which you think was 5 days, is only 7 days. You would think, but it's only 5 days.
It's actually 4+ days because the 5th day is done on a Thursday. So.
Oh, and it's their weekend edition.
So there's basically, if you have breaking news. They don't even break in on television anymore. They'll run it as a crawl on the bottom of your screen.
Yeah.
Because they don't, basically...
That is breaking news now.
Well, that's their breaking news now. You figure out, like, I'm looking, they tried to assassinate the Vice President of Egypt, and that's not news.
That is news.
Well, I know.
Especially with what's going on.
Here's a good one. They finally had to have the, I guess, the Assistant Prime Minister of the Prime Minister of Germany. He made the announcement with Hillary Clinton sitting there that we've heard about the disgraceful attempt on the Vice President, and she's sitting there, and then they have to talk about it then. Mm-hmm. And he said that we're worried about the problems in the Middle East because that's what our news people should have been talking about. No. Anybody hear about the attempt on the life of the governor of Missouri?
I know, that didn't even make it.
No, didn't make it.
I mean, you knew about it.
Didn't make it. Well, I tend to watch the news. Because
a lot of it.
I'm a news director, folks. So is the girl in bikini. So
believe it or not.
This is our serious, non-serious stuff because it's just, the news is no longer a 24-hour cycle, which is why they ask, well, why isn't news being paid as much attention to? Well, because what you did is you keep cutting it back. You got to see the size of the Los Angeles Times. It's like a pamphlet.
You know what? I know. I saw it the other day. I'm like, what? Because usually the LA Times used to be like about this wide each sheet, and then you open it up, and it's like this. Now I swear it must have shrunk, and I haven't measured it, but it looks like it shrunk a good 3 or 4 inches off the side.
Because they keep cutting it back. Every time you shrink it down in size, that's not advertising. They're not cutting advertising space out. They're cutting news space out. Advertising remains the same constant. So, it's like some idiot calling us on a landline.
I know, part of it.
That's what, anytime they want to sell things, they call us on a landline. But it's just, I worked on a couple of movies in the 1959, 1960 with Randolph Scott. And Randolph Scott would be moaning the fact that they aren't making Westerns like they used to. And I remember my father was Eastwood. My father knew Gary Cooper. Gary Cooper said, tell Randy because you aren't making Westerns. That's why they weren't making Westerns like they used to, because the guys that did all the bitching about your art weren't doing it. The problem is the news people had cut back on the news departments. They cut back here. The more they cut back, the less news there is for people to see and hear or read, and the less they pay attention to it. They cut their own throats. I mean, people don't realize that Telly Savalas, I think, was one time VP of the news department over at ABC.
Most people watching this are going, who in the world is Telly Savalas?
Yeah, Kojak. But he helped create Wide World of Sports. Wide World of Sports was a division of the... Ron Arledge headed the news division and the sports department, and he used both of them to promote news. I mean, anybody remember Jim McKay, who was a sportscaster that got the Peabody Award and all of this for his coverage of the Berlin Massacre? Because the people were back and forth. Bryant Gumbel was a newsman that became a sports reporter. And, you know, that's how it worked. Those people bounced back and forth. Bob Costas, newsman in sports. Nowadays, they don't do that. There's no crossover anymore. You're one or the other, and they don't do the same. But the departments basically took advantage of having your stuff there to do things over here. That's how you paid the bills. In order to make things separate, because they try to separate sports, entertainment stuff from news, they divided everything up, and then guess who stopped doing things because they felt, well, it just got awful expensive. We can't afford to send 10 people out, so let's send 5 out. Let's cut back on how much news we're doing a day.
Well, you know, one of the things we noticed, because we cover different trade shows, right? For example, NAB, National Association of Broadcasters, one of the hottest things that they had was that little GoPro, right? It was the high-def camera so that the news people could wear it on their wrist and sit there and talk. Yeah. Right?
I mean, they sold that stuff because of the high-def thing. We can tell you.
The idea is, as they call it, the one-man band, which we've been talking about for a while. Which is one person going out and doing the news, they put it on there, and they sit there and talk to the camera.
Which is the way it was in my day. I can tell you, a network, basically an anchor man for one of the local stations, at the LA Auto Show, had one of these rods like we have to put a camera on, which we basically use for our purposes. He had it out like this, put his blogging on it. Okay, we want to get this shot better. Tell him, you know, just follow me, and we'll get the shot. You know, he's directing the thing, and a woman from one of the other.
He's doing it.
I mean, they're sitting there on the camera stand, you know, watching him. He's doing it like his news department. His cameraman is with him, following him everywhere, doing the whole thing, and then, you know, they're doing this, you know, with the thing, and then, you know, like the camera changed position. You know, like he was basically, everything was out, hands and stuff were all out of the way, so he's making like he got a cameraman, and that's because they cut back on so much on the news departments now. And the news departments wouldn't have to been cut back if they'd have simply kept doing business as usual. But, you know, well, we need to do this, we need to do that, and we'll get more attention. Well, bean counters have never, in the history of mankind, been able, the same people that do the bean counting are the same people that are running our government at the moment. They think that they know how things should be done.
I know, which is also another reason why people wonder why there's not as much investigative reporting. It's called...
Because you can go to jail for doing that.
So. Well, and it takes some more time. You can go to jail.
You have to sit there, okay, why Dan Rather is gone from network news is because Dan Rather is old world and he didn't do his homework. They'd let somebody, they'd let some 18-year-old kid do it and get away with it, you know,
But a seasoned professional of his caliber, no.
No, you sit there and do your background. But see, he let his